So my next question, the Bible says that women shouldn't preach.
Wow.
What's your view on that?
Well, you happen to have a person before you who was taught by one of Britain's very influential feminist theologian. Doesn't mean I am a feminist. Her name is she's Professor Tina Beattie, and she taught at Roehampton University many years ago when I did my undergrad studies then. And that doesn't mean I have to become a feminist, because she was. But I think she gave us some very good grounding, logical arguments of feminist approaches. And by feminism, for our viewers, by feminism, we don't mean the radical feminists, those who are attempting to replace men. And that's not what we mean. What we're saying is that there are various approaches to the Bible that should seek to elevate women to an equal status, at least by nature, to that of men. We're functional. We're ontologically the same, and by ontologically we mean we are the same. We're human being, but we're functionally different. I've always said I would never want to be in a labor ward giving birth. Absolutely not. Sometimes you visit the not postnatal, but the labor wards, and you wonder, is it the man giving birth or is it the woman? But so I wouldn't want to do that, because functionally, even though I'm a human being like the lady laying there, we are functionally different, and so on. And I remember I am for women preaching, pastoring, leading, even though I think it will have some bearing on women with their responsibilities as well. But I'm for women in that context. And the reason why I'm for women, I think there's a misunderstanding of the text in 1 Timothy 2 and verse 12, which is the key text. So we say in church 1 Timothy 2 and verse 12, but 1 Timothy 2:12 says, suffer not a woman to let a woman learn in silence. I suffer not a woman to teach or to usurp authority over a man. So she should learn in silence. Now, the Greek word that is used there for authority is what we would call ugona in the biblical studies. We would call it a hapax legomenon, and I'll explain it.
That's a really big word.
Hapax legomenon means this is a word that only occurs once in the entire New Testament, or in the entire book, or in the entire letter, right? So the hapax legomenon is the word authority, and the word for authority there, two ways to pronounce it. It's authenteo or autheneteo, right? The word for authority. Now think about it this way. In that very chapter in 1 Timothy 2, Paul uses two other words for authority. So he had many other words to use for authority, right? Exousia, right? Dunamis, for example, word for power also can mean authority. Exousia, the word for authority as well. So why use authenteo here and only use it once in the entire New Testament? Or in the entire, say, letter to Timothy, right? The question is, whatever was going on in Timothy's church, and by the way, Timothy's church was at Ephesus. A lot of people are not aware of that. So if you read 1 Timothy chapter 1, you notice there's some problems going on at Ephesus. Who was Timothy? Those are the questions we should ask. Timothy's father, think about it. Was he Jewish? No, I think he was Greek, and his mother was Jewish, right? So you can already see the problem. If you're in a church and you're supposedly Jewish church, let's say it was a Jewish church, right? And your pastor, right, his parents are half Jewish and half Gentile, you're already having some critique as to whether this guy is truly Jewish, right, and stuff. So those are some of the things that were going on in Timothy's church. There's an issue with authority. There's also an issue with men usurping authority over other men as well. We know that because there are two men mentioned, Hymenaeus and Alexander, or Philetus, Hymenaeus and Alexander in chapter 1. So here we come to chapter 2, right? What the writer is saying, in Timothy's church at Ephesus, the background is there is a woman's lib movement. I'm making it popular. Woman's lib movement, because Ephesus, was at the center of we had a temple to Artemis, Artemis, or the goddess Diana. And in this temple you have male priests and female priestesses. Now, what was happening here, it's believed by a lot of the scholars that when the women would become converted at Ephesus, because they had authority as priestesses, in the cult of Diana or Artemis, they think they could come into the church and then wield
Use
the
that-
same authority.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a text that was making a rule for all women at all time. It was saying these women, and I'm going to suggest to you, maybe a particular ringleader, one woman who was stirring up the strife. And I know that because when you read 1 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 12, he started talking about women should learn in before he said women learn in silence, he said, I'm asking men to pray everywhere, lifting holy hands without wrath and doubting, right? Then he said the women should dress with shamefacedness and sobriety, not with gold pearls, costly,
Cover the head,
and
yeah.
so on and so forth, and so on. Then he said women, right? But when he comes to verse 12, he says, I suffer not a woman. Now that term, a woman, could be all the women under one umbrella, or it could just mean that one particular woman
That's
who
causing
is
trouble.
causing the trouble. I don't want her to operate in the position of an eldership. So it's not the idea of simply no woman can be a pastor, no woman can be a
Yeah.
leader, but if you're going to usurp authority, and you know what that word means? Usurp authority, seizing authority by force. So whatever that woman or the women were doing, they were kind of creating a coup d'etat, right, to overthrow Timothy and the eldership. And Paul says, listen, sort this out, and so that is not an indictment, an anathema if a woman becomes a pastor, and so on and so forth. Because if we're going to do that, might as well we go through other places of the Bible. Romans 16 listed about 13 women in Paul's as supporter to Paul. One of them is called Janiah. Some people change the name to Janias to make it masculine, but Janiah. And then there's just and not only that, you have Phoebe, right? Or Phoebe, as we say. You know who Phoebe is? She was a deacon, a servant, right? Most people say the word servant there is just simply just serving each other and all that stuff. No, the word there is the equivalent term that was used in the next chapter, in 1 Timothy 3. Remember, if a man desires the office of a bishop, he desires a
Yes.
good work. When you read verse 7 and 8 in 1 Timothy 3, a deacon must be blameless. Similar responsibilities like a bishop, right? But the word deacon there is diakonos in Greek. When you go over to Romans 16 of Phoebe, the word servant is the feminine form of diakonos.
Wow.
Nothing else changes. So whatever the responsibilities are for the masculine
The same
deacon,
for the
it's the
female.
same for the feminine
Wow.
or deaconess, as we call them.
I've never actually had anyone explain that to me
Yeah,
properly,
so-
because I'm always wondering, women should not preach, women should not preach. And then when I see women preach, I'm like, are they sinning? Are they, what's going on?
The
So-
key element to the text is not just the authority and and by the way, the text didn't say the woman shouldn't preach. The word that is used there is teaching.
Teaching, okay.
Not preaching, even though they use that text to say she can't preach, but it's teaching there. There's something else I wanted to point out when it comes to women speaking. The text is not talking about all women in all generation, in all time period. What it's talking about is the usurpation of authority. You can be a woman who is a pastor, but you're functioning under the authority of your eldership, the church board or executive team or whatever. Once you're functioning under authority, respectfully, even as part of the eldership, you can lead, you can pastor, you can do, because you're not usurping authority. Now, Ogona, here is the challenge. Who is it in terms of gender that causes most breakaways in churches? Do you think it's the women? No, it's not. So it appears to me that men can also usurp authority over other men in the church. So we've got to balance the text when we read them, exegetically, that is.